The day is finally here. After going through the lengthy lease application process and all that back and forth on the LOI, you finally have a copy of the lease agreement. But beware, before you sign it, we still have some prep work to do. In this video, I'll be discussing what to know before you sign your lease agreement. I'm Kavita Korpatia, founder of Acreage Real Estate. I specialize in the sales and leasing of commercial property. In my past videos, I discussed how to identify good commercial space. I also showed you how to submit a strong lease application and lease negotiation terms to include in a letter of intent. In this video, we'll focus on the lease signing process and what to do before you sign on the dotted lines. As we discussed in the previous video, the letter of intent is a summary of a lease agreement, and once the landlord and you come to a mutual agreement on the terms included in the LOI, these terms are then included in a lease agreement. Therefore, once you get a copy of the lease, please review it thoroughly to make sure all the agreed terms in the LOI reflect on the lease agreement clearly. Look, leases are drafted by human beings, and sometimes people mean to do the right thing but might make an error. Therefore, review it, make sure what you agreed on is reflected in the lease agreement. Check the dates, rental rates, annual rent increases, free rent, and everything else you agreed on. Remember, any verbal agreements you might have made during the negotiation process should also be included in writing in the lease agreement. For example, if the landlord agreed to remove a wall in your commercial space 60 days after the lease start date, then that should be included in writing in the lease agreement as well. Unfortunately, the days of people making agreement on a handshake are gone. To protect your interests, you want everything in writing. Keep in mind, the lease might be about 20 to 80 pages depending on the landlord, while your LOI was only about 3 pages. There are a lot of moving parts to the lease and additional terms in the lease. I do recommend having an attorney review it, and at the very least, take a day or two to review the lease before you sign it. Do not hesitate to ask questions if something doesn't make sense to you or if you identify an error in your lease agreement. Make a list of the errors and questions you have and then send a full list to the landlord or their agent. In professional environments, people tend to get annoyed if you send one question at a time. Try to send all your concerns in one email. A good landlord is willing to offer explanations and fix any errors. In the event your questions aren't being addressed and errors are not being corrected, I would take that as a red flag. If a landlord is already very challenging to deal with, then is this the landlord you want to commit to the next 3 or 5 years? Look, you're never going to be best friends with the landlord. But at the very least, you should expect some professionalism and expect someone to answer your questions. It's rare, but there are situations where there are months of searching for the right location and successful negotiations. The lease doesn't get signed because of disagreement on the final lease agreement. It happens and it's okay. Don't enter into an agreement you don't feel comfortable with. Also, there is no lease agreement unless and until you and the landlord have both signed it. You have not secured the space until then. My recommendation is do not enter into any other agreements and incur any costs associated with your commercial space until the lease is signed by both parties. For example, hang on to signing a construction contract and paying a deposit until your lease agreement is fully executed. I've come across situations when the tenant has signed, but the landlord changes their mind in signing the lease at the last minute. Therefore, never assume the lease is done until the lease is signed by every signer that needs to sign. Lastly, I'm a real estate agent and not an attorney. Nothing I say should be construed as legal advice. I hope this video was helpful to you. Thank you for watching. Please like this video if you found it to be useful, and please follow us for more future videos. See you next time.